So again, my name's Ryan Roberts. I'm the program manager for the National Fish Habitat Partnership, and I'm an employee of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, which is an association representing all state fish and wildlife agencies. So thank you for inviting me here today. And selfishly, we have a board meeting actually here next week, next Tuesday and Wednesday, right across the hall at 114. So I'm kind of here to scout out our room as well, which is good. But thank you for the warm welcome. So our mission with the National Fish Habitat Partnership is to protect, restore, and enhance the nation's fish habitat and aquatic communities through partnerships that foster fish habitat conservation and improve the quality of life for the American people. Very apple pie. You know, we do have 20 partnerships under our effort. Here's a map of all of our partnerships that we have, the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture being one of them. We have 5 partnerships in Alaska. We also have a partnership in Hawaii, and most of our partnerships are either species-based, region-based. For example, we have one that covers the Southeast United States, and it more or less is the borders of the Southeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. That partnership is called the Southeast Aquatic Resources Partnership. We have a partnership on the Atlantic coast as well. And, you know, as you can see, and as you can imagine, there is a lot of overlap within some of our partnerships. So it provides some unique opportunities for our partnerships to work together collaboratively on different habitat issues and specific areas regionally. One partnership that we do have that is more or less system-based is a reservoir fish habitat partnership, and that works across the U.S. So really, why now? And it's been kind of why now since 2006 when our efforts started. The U.S. is home to more than 3,000 fish species. Healthy habitats are essential for sustainable fish populations. Nearly 40% of the nation's freshwater fish species are considered at risk or vulnerable to extinction. Habitat loss is the most common cause for extinction of freshwater fish in the U.S. over the past century. And in 1997, Congress declared that one of the greatest long-term threats to the viability of commercial and rec fishing is the continuing loss of marine, estuarine, and other aquatic habitats. So a little bit of history. The concept for the National Fish Habitat Partnership was really formed through the Sportfishing and Boating Partnership Council, which is an advisory council to the Secretary of the Interior. Gary Myers, he was the longtime Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency director. He really spearheaded the effort, and the National Fish Habitat Partnership was really modeled after the North American Wetlands Conservation Act and a lot of the waterfowl management groups that are established across the country's joint ventures, what have you. 2006, we had our first, the first National Fish Habitat Action Plan was signed. We do have 2 action plans, so we're sort of operating under the second edition. First board meeting was in 2006. There were 5 initial fish habitat partnerships that sort of came under the national effort right off the bat. Those were the Southeast Aquatic Resources Partnership, the Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture, Western Native Trout Initiative, Driftless Area Restoration Effort, and the Matsu Basin Salmon Habitat Partnership in Alaska. In 2010 and 2011, the National Fish Habitat Partnership, through its Science and Data Committee, developed its first national fish habitat assessment, assessing the nation's waters. And in 2012, the second edition of the National Fish Habitat Action Plan was developed and really built off of the 2006 action plan. In 2016, the second National Fish Habitat Assessment was completed. These were all goals and objectives that were built into the first edition of the action plan to meet all of these objectives. And in 2020, the landscape for our program really changed, and we are still going through some growing pains with the passage of the America's Conservation Enhancement Act signed into law. This was in the previous administration, and essentially that codified our partnership program through Congress. To date, we have implemented about 115,000 projects, and that is through the end of calendar year 2021. So really, the core of our mission is really built on science and data. The science and data strategy has always really been built on identifying causative factors for declining fish populations in aquatic systems, using an integrated landscape approach that includes upstream, downstream linkages of large-scale habitat condition factors, assessing and classifying the nation's fish habitats, and providing partners with easy access to information to support their work. So when we developed these action plans, we essentially had a lot of objectives. The 5 main objectives for the action plan, second edition that was developed in 2012, are achieving measurable habitat results. These are somewhat shortened for this slide. Establish a consensus set of national conservation strategies, broadening the community of support for fish habitat conservation, filling gaps in the National Fish Habitat Assessment, and communicating conservation outcomes produced collectively by fish habitat partnerships. One of the best ways that we really highlight the work of our partnerships on an annual basis, we developed a campaign back in 2007 called the Waters to Watch campaign. To date, we've had about 130 projects highlighted. We typically do about 10 projects annually. And really the basis for it is to really put some nice stories on our website, as well as photos. We also do a press release highlighting these projects. And we've done lately a social media campaign. It started in about 2019. And we do put a small amount of investment into Facebook promotion of the projects, both collectively and individually. In 2021, on average, our projects, they reached over 5,000 people on Facebook and received about 305 engagements from users. That's either people coming and liking them or commenting on the projects or asking questions. So the goal of the Waters to Watch campaign really is to demonstrate science-based aquatic habitat conservation actions make a difference to benefit aquatic habitats, local communities, anglers, and economies, which are really majorly important factors for, I think, highlighting the work of the partnership and really what we do collectively. Some of our 2021 Waters to Watch, I won't read them all, but you know, they range from marine habitats to freshwater habitats to a reservoir project as well. So, and they're really spread out across the U.S. So, in a lot of ways, we kind of work with the partnership coordinator, like Lori. All of these partnerships have their own coordinators, and we try to work with them to reach local groups that work on the habitat projects, as well as some press in that area specifically to highlight the work of these projects and the benefits of these projects that are being done. So in 2015, the National Fish Habitat Board agreed to establish a 501c3 nonprofit. We were originally established in 2006 as sort of a quasi-governmental organization. Our partnerships really could not take in funding outside of Fish and Wildlife Service allocations for projects. So the non-federal members of our board decided to establish a nonprofit to be able to help the partnerships, bank some funds, potentially raise some funds on their own for additional projects and support within their partnership ranges. So the organization is called Beyond the Pond. There's some direct linkages off of our website, which I'll show here shortly, as well as the Beyond the Pond USA website, where people and the business community could come and potentially make tax deductible donations. So individuals can come and donate there as well. One major windfall we've had in the last year is Bass Pro Shops approached us, and they wanted to have a eight region fishing tournament. Now this is bass fishing for amateurs across the country. And they really have been a gracious partner and sort of helping us in the early goings of like our reservoir fish habitat partnership and some of our other partnerships that were taking off. So last year they approached us and they said, we want to put together a tournament where a third of the registration fees for the angling teams, which typically each event had about 350 boats at each of these events, and they wanted to match that, and Toyota would match that as well. So we were able to kind of travel around to these events, talk about our program with a variety of different anglers who were involved. Here just some photos of some of the tournaments. The closest one to here would have been on the Potomac River in July of last year. It was hot out there. And it all sort of commenced in November. They had a finals championship, and we received a nearly $1.6 million donation from Bass Pro Shops. Now, this donation has been turned into a grant program for basically, and this is sort of what the funder wanted. Bass Pro wanted to have a majority of this funding go to reservoir projects in the U.S. where a lot of anglers do fish, as well as lakes and tributaries that connect lakes and reservoirs as well. Some of our resources that we have out there, I kind of stole this from a presentation that I did in person. So I did put some QR codes in there, but we can be found at fishhabitat.org. There's links to all of our social media out there. We also have a YouTube page where most recently we utilized for our partnerships, and the coordinators did some voiceovers talking about their partnerships and what they do specifically across the country. I'll take any questions. One thing I will say is, and that I didn't really highlight with our 20 partnerships. So that's really where our strength is with the National Fish Habitat Partnership. Those partnerships are quite creative in going out and finding matching funds. I would say on average, these partnerships get about $350,000 annually from the Fish and Wildlife Service. These partnerships can typically match that funding 3 and 4 to 1, in some cases 8 to 1, with other dollars that are out there, in combining and working on projects collaboratively with other groups. So that's really where our strength is. We traditionally receive about $6.5 million annually from the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that is matched typically, all told, there's probably about $35,000 to $40,000 that goes out annually to on-the-ground conservation and coordination support for these partnerships.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.